Today in the news, major corporations had a lot of economic growth. General Motors, Ford, and Chrysler overshadowed all of the competition in the automotive industry. General Electric and Westinghouse had enjoyed similar positions in the electrical business. Giant corporations were fearful after the Great Depression of investing all of their resources in one business, called diversified conglomerates. They bought out companies that produced different goods so that if one area of the economy failed, their investments in another area were safe. An example is International Telephone and Telegraph Purchase, Rent-A-Car, Sheraton Hotels, Hartford Fire Insurance, and Continental Baking to ensure their investments were safe. The next story is new development in technology, which also increased industrial growth. In 1956, film producer Walt Disney voiced Americans' fears about atomic power in his book and film, Our Friend the Atom. Disney first began with a story about a fisherman who found a sealed bottle. When he opened the bottle, a genie escaped and threatened to kill him. Soon the fisherman got the genie back in the bottle and would only open it again when the genie granted him 3 wishes. The story of the atom is like the tale. Disney explained the fable has a happy ending. Like the fisherman, we must think before we act. The final story is about television. Americans fell in love with this invention. It was invented in the 1950s. Developed in the 1930s, the television became a very popular household item. By the 1953s, 2/3 of the American families owned TVs. In 1955, the average family watched 4 to 5 hours of TV a day. Children watched Howdy Doody Time, the Mickey Mouse Club. Teenagers listened to rock and roll music played on American Bandside. Other viewers followed comedies like I Love Lucy and Father Knows Best. Television networks raised money by selling advertising time. Commercials gave Americans constant exposure to products they supposedly needed to live the comfortable life. Children grew up singing the lyrics to commercials rather than the popular songs. Companies gave their money's worth for advertising dollars. Millions of viewers that were persuaded to buy the items they saw in commercials. And here's some vocab. William J. Levitt, he built new communities in the suburbs after World War II using mass production techniques. Per capita income, the average income per person. Diversified conglomerates, giant corporations investing all of their resources in a single business. Franchises, the right to open McDonald's using the same system. Beatniks, member of the Beat Generation.
Vote for Truman. Truman decided to run another term but accepts defeat. Even the people of his own party are not supporting him because they are rooting for another guy named Henry Wallace. He has been Roosevelt's 3rd vice president. Many believed he would carry Roosevelt's ideas. Truman is currently running against Thomas Dewey. Truman traveled the country campaigning. Truman's campaign is electrifying. Tomorrow's election day. Don't forget to vote for Truman.
To begin this sports report, I'm doing about Jackie Robinson. He had an amazing season with the Brooklyn Dodgers, and now he is featured in many baseball magazines, which is very important because he is an African American. And breaking the racial segregation, despite many instances of prejudice with his fans, opponents, and in and off the field, and also with his own teammates, he had a very good first season. And also on the news, Montgomery bus boycott. Yesterday, a seamstress who had been a secretary of the Montgomery NAACP for 12 years. She took a seat on the bus, which colored people are allowed to sit in the middle of the bus, where she took a seat. A white man got on the bus and the bus driver ordered her to give up hers. She refused, and she was arrested, and next up the police seized her and everything, and she had to stand a trial and for violating segregation laws. African American civil rights and 50 other African American leaders met, and they decided we're gonna no longer ride the bus if that has to happen. So the entire bus system they boycotted. They wouldn't go on any bus. They walked many miles to home, to school, to work, and back again. But it was successful. The African Americans boycotted the bus. They didn't want it. And also, before and during the war, African Americans were not treated as equals by a large portion of the American society. However, war campaigns and for civil rights began to skyrocket after. thousands of African Americans have served their country during the war and felt the service was a mockery if they weren't allowed their own rights back in the U.S. So, in July 1948, President Truman banned discrimination in hiring of federal employees. He also ordered to end segregation and discrimination in the armed forces. Some vocab words. I'll have Martin Luther King Jr. He's an African American civil rights leader from the mid-1950s until his assassination in 1968. He used nonviolent means such as marches, boycotts, and legal challenges to win civil rights. He also was a big part of the Montgomery bus boycott. Jackie Robinson, an athlete, became the first African American to play baseball in major leagues. The baby boom, an explosion of population in the United States following World War II. Termination policy, which is a government policy to eliminate reservations of Native Americans in mainstream American life. And Thurgood Marshall, the first African American Supreme Court Justice, who was a lawyer, won landmark school desegregation case, Brown versus Board of Education, in 1954. And here's some vocab. Martin Luther King Jr., an African American civil rights leader from the mid-1950s until his assassination in 1968, used nonviolent methods such as marches, boycotts, and illegal challenges to win civil rights. He also was a giant part of the Montgomery bus boycott. And Jackie Robinson, an athlete in 1947, became the first African American to play baseball in the major leagues. Baby boom, an explosion of population in the United States following World War II. Termination policy, United States government. It was policy to eliminate the reservations of Native Americans in mainstream American life. And Thurgood Marshall, the first African American Supreme Court Justice as a lawyer. He won landmark school desegregation case, Brown versus Board of Education, in 1954.
Would you like to listen to music in the daily needs like this girl over here? Well, now you can with our new radio. You can buy a radio now for only $69.25 if you call 1-800-69-RADIO. Here in Michigan, it's warm and sunny, and with a small percent of rain, like 2% rain. Also in the news, women's and men's role are changing. Post World War II, men and women have strict roles. Men were supposed to go to school to find jobs to support their wives and children. It was their world where they got away from home, where they earned money and made an important political, economic, and social decisions. Women were expected to play their supporting role for their husband's life. They cooked, cleaned, cooked meals, and raised their children. During World War II, they were allowed to work outside of the home, but they also had to give their jobs up when the soldiers returned. By 1950s, most middle-class women settled into the demands of raising children and their housework. Married women with jobs soon outnumbered unmarried women with jobs. Near the end of World War II and the post-war years, the gap grew larger. In 1963, Betty Friedman published an explosive critique on the 1950s ideal of womanhood. Frieden had graduated with top honors from Smith College in 1942, but had given up her career for being a journalist to be a homemaker and a mother full-time. In her The Feminine Mystique, Frieden lashed out on the culture that had denied creative roles of women. Pediatrician Benjamin Spock assured American families that mothers should stay home with their children. He advised a mother to remain with his children if she wanted them to grow up secure and stable. In his Common Sense of Baby and Childcare book, published in 1946, despite expectations, more women than ever before, many of them married with children, had held paying jobs in the 1950s.